Yo, what up? This is Gabriel coming at you with another tier list. So there's so many artifacts in the game, I don't think I'm gonna realistically be able to do all of them in one video, so I'm gonna do all the clan-specific ones first, and then probably move on to the clanless ones. That'll be a larger video, but these ones should hopefully be relatively quick. I'll probably just go through them in sequential order here, starting with Hellhorned. Now, I will say, just a comment on clan-specific artifacts. I don't think that each clan is created equal in this sense. I think some clans clearly have better selections than others, both at the bottom, top, and sort of mid of what you're going to get. And I think, for me, for my money, Hellhorned or Wormkin probably have the best selection of artifacts. So when you see, trinket merchants or Herzl's hordes on the map, when you're playing those clans, especially if you're playing them together, you might give extra consideration. But that all really comes down to personal preference and what you actually think of the clan artifacts yourself, right? Like if you didn't think they were good, then obviously it doesn't make sense to do that. But let's get into it here. So a lot of these are situational. But, when the situation comes up, which is pretty often, let's be honest, because imps are so often a part of your game plan, Ashes of the Fallen, it just can't be beat. Doubles your summons, just ridiculous. Normally to double, if you think about it, take the fledgling imp as an example. Self-infusion costs 25 whole shards to do that, but it's totally worth it because it's just this giant bomb of rage to your entire floor. Well, for no shards and just picking this up, you just turn every fledgling imp you have into that power level. Transcendence also just double everything. You get double cards back from Impish Scholar. It even works outside of imps for weird niche scenarios, like if you want your Hollow to have literally double health. Steel Singer as well. You can have double Marshallord egg summons. A lot of fun stuff you can do there, but realistically, 99% of the time it's the imps that you're taking this for, and it certainly is a beast there. Literally just doubles all the value on something that already provides a ton of value. And if you think about it, when you do those self-infusions, the value's just really crazy. It starts to get pretty nutty. It's like you get that self-infused fledgling imp that was giving 10 rage to the floor, now you're giving 20 rage to the floor. Get out of here. Speaking of rage, I will say, Ashes of the Fallen, clearly, if you don't do imps, you're probably just not going to take it, so that would be the only argument against S tier I could have for Ashes of the Fallen, but I feel like it's just too insane too often to keep out of the top spot. But if I go by my data, the top artifact for Hellhorn for me actually is Resonant Shard. So the fact is, it's just such a takeable artifact in Hellhorn. It's just really solid. Very, very, very rare that you're not going to have a rage-based build in Hellhorn. It happens sometimes, but it is rare. You'll have a lot of runs where you just didn't find the good imps, but to just not find rage entirely is pretty rare. So Resonant Shard, while it doesn't have the crazy ceiling that Ashes of the Fallen has, it just has still a pretty good floor, and the ceiling's pretty decent too. It's just, it's adding 33% power to your rage. Or did I say that right? You're going from 2 to 3, basically, on your rage. So, basically increasing it. I guess it's an increase by 50% if you think about it that way. So it's pretty crazy. Pretty crazily good. Not on the level of like a deranged brute or anything, but that doesn't mean it's not still just really good. It now turns your Ritual of Battles. They were giving you 20 damage before, now they're giving you 30 damage. Your Fledgling Imps, giving you 5, so 10 damage before, now they're giving you 15 damage. It's pretty nice. Next on the list, similar to Ashes of the Fallen, it is somewhat situational. The situation being that you're using the banner units of Hellhorn. You might as well just call it that. I mean, literally all the banner units for Hellhorn are demons. So if you have Hellhorn banners, then Grrrg Goad is for you. I kind of wish that whatever you call him, Hornbreaker Prince was considered a demon. I mean, if ever there was a demon, that guy certainly looks like a demon to me. But, can't win them all. Grrrg's Goad, though, just adding multi-strike, like the most powerful frickin' upgrade in the game to all your banner units. I'm not sure if you've done the math on this, but I did the math. I didn't show my work or anything, but you have to trust me on this. It's good. Definitely S-tier quality. The only time it isn't good is when you don't use Hellhorn banners, which is rarer in the DLC because they fixed a lot of the Hellhorn banners. Pre-DLC, this found is good, but it often wasn't hitting anything because you kind of similar to the current Umbra situation, you just avoided Hellhorn banners like the plague pre-DLC. And the final one I'm putting into the S tier here is Railhammer. Another one that not another one, but because these are always good, but I guess I didn't really pay it much respect pre-DLC. I don't think there's huge reasons that the DLC made it that much better, but for whatever reason, I think I just caught on to how good this is, and oh my god, it's so good. Now, obviously, the best defense is a good offense in the DLC, but there are certain exceptions, and this is one of them. When you can literally basically double the value you get each turn from, say, a set of steelworkers on your floor, it's pretty crazy. Or like Stygian armor incant, even like an endless welder helper infusion or essence or whatever that's happening every turn. Just your normal armor cards, March of Shields or whatnot. Shelter. It's pretty good with Shelter from Wormkin. So yeah, just really, really crazy power levels that Railhammer can often get you. The floor is not great, but it's still okay. The floor would be that you're just kind of playing armor every now and then, and you get 4 extra armor here and there, which is still okay. Not super great. But the ceiling is just, whew, it's something else. It's a beauty to behold. I thought I might put the next two I could definitely consider into S tier, but, I think there's often enough situations where you're just not really going to take them. I mean, it's exact same situations as double summons. I just don't think Queen's Imp gives you the insanity that Ashes of the Fallen gives you. I mean, it's really good. But, it gives you a free draw and a free thing of Ember once per turn as long as you're playing an Imp per turn. So that's really good value. But I wouldn't put it on the level of these, I think, just because the scaling that these give you is kind of unparalleled. This doesn't necessarily, it's more of a utility artifact. But if you said it was S tier, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. But I do find it's supported by my data too. It's not really taken as much as these four. These 4 really have an edge. And then on the same sense, this one I'd probably even argue harder for S tier on, the Imp-cicle. But I think there's a lot of runs where it doesn't make sense on. And it can actively work against you. Like on some of these, like if I take, the Queen's, I don't know why I can't remember the name of it, but this little thing here. If I take that, there's really no downside to taking it. Whereas Imp-cicle can have an active downside by taking it and having it in a deck that doesn't work in. If you can't play the Imps out, those are going to keep cycling back into your deck, which is going to hurt your draws on redraw. So there's more considerations that you have to make with this one. Nothing listed so far has any real downsides, but this certainly does. All that being said, it's still, I think, S tier quality when it works. It's just, it's a little unpredictable in what it gives you, but it gives you some pretty good imps pretty often. You could get a fledgling imp, Pyre Chomper, You can get Transcendent every now and then from it. I don't know what the odds are, but it seems better than Imp in a Box. I don't know if that's actually true or not. It's just what I've witnessed. That could completely be false. It might be using the same pool of RNG, but who knows? Either way, even if you're not getting Transcendence out of it, you're getting pretty good stuff out of it. Definitely helps with scaling. You can get Welder Helpers too. You love to see Welder Helpers a lot of the time from this. And that's kind of the A and S tier. I think these are really the bulk of what really when I think of Hellhorn and I think Hellhorn has good artifacts, these are the 6 I'm thinking of. And then down to the B tier, not bad by any means, but just not really quite as great as these. Collection of Tales, similar to Resonant Shard, it's a very takeable artifact. You'll see in my data that I do end up taking it a lot. But what it actually does for you, it really doesn't necessarily do that much. Comparing it to Resonant Shard, it's just kind of objectively worse. Unless it's like a weird situation where you really had like no rage generation at all, like Scorching Restraints is like your only rage gen, and then you needed to like hit a last stand or something. Then maybe it has some niche benefit over it, but for the most part, if you compare it to like just let's say you just had a single fledgling imp and you compared Ashes of the Fallen to it, you get 5 extra rage immediately from Ashes of the Fallen, whereas Collection of Tales comparatively gives you 5 extra rage in the form of it locked in the 5 rage versus just giving you 10 rage. It just locked you in at 5 and gave you that extra 5 over the course of 5 entire turns. So it's pretty slow in the value it gives you, and then it doesn't even give you that much value usually. Relentless rounds do not go on long enough for this to really be that impactful. But all that being said, it still is technically never really bad for you, right? Like, it just gives you extra rage, which is good. But it's not great. And then this one, unlike Collection of Tales, where I think Collection of Tales just feels really like B tier all across the board to me, like ceiling, floor, it's just a B tier. This one just falls into B tier because it's very situational, I think, and when it can actually be giving you S and A tier level quality. I think it's often giving you C to D tier level quality, rarely giving you B tier, but, I think as often as it's C and D, it's less often in the A and S, but when it is in the A and S, it just feels really good. So I did think it wasn't maybe right to put it at C tier. So I put it in the B tier, but maybe toward the end of it, right? There's only 2 in the B tier here, but if we were ranking like all the artifacts, it'd be like more toward the end of B tier. It's good. It's just like, it works well with some things. One, I think a big downside is the fact that Vent exists in Hellhorned. You don't get in, Vent's one of those weird X costs, kind of like Mind Collapse, where you really don't get much value by actually pouring Ember into it. It's just getting value when you play it at 0 and have flat damage boosts on it. But, it has the additional downside that when you're trying to save up a bunch of Ember with something like this Unbroken Horn, often you have to play a Vent. I mean, you added it to your deck for a reason, and you probably need that AoE when it shows up, and you now have this like problem where it's like, okay, if I had a game plan where I'm like using this to try to play like a One-Horn Tome or something like that, now I have to make this decision of, do I play this Vent and lose all my energy, getting really no benefit out of it, but kill the AoE like I need on that turn, or do I just take some hits to the pyre or something in favor of saving the Ember? So it can often be awkward with that, and that's true of any X cost, but Vent's by far going to be the most common situation that comes up in. But when you don't have Vent, when you have situations where this can be good, it can be really good. I mean, it's, usually better with other clans, I would say. One-Horn Tome is probably the best situation for it, and maybe Last Stand in clan, but really like Umbra, which actually is basically one of the only clans that has good X-cost cards. Every other clan just has the spikes, but Oaken has a good spike, so it can be good with that. But, typically, like, I think of like Shroud Spike as a really kind of prime target for comboing with this. You can just save up a bunch of Ember, pour a gigantic Shroud Spike into ideally like a Morsel Miner, and then that will just give you a crap ton of stats. That's usually the ceiling there. I guess you could do it with a Hellhorned Spike too. I've done that in rare occasions, but you need a lot of Ember for that to actually be good, and you probably need it double stacked. But it can be good there too. A lot of words for an artifact that I feel doesn't necessarily deserve them, Unbroken Horn. But the next one we have, this is the lone one I'm putting in the C tier, Scorching Restraints. It's one that definitely shines a lot more in the early game. You can set up, everything just comes in with an extra 6 damage. But the decay is noticeable at that point, because 3 rage ticks down pretty quick to the point where it's not giving you any benefit, but it's still pretty good. And then it, of course, can get you kick-started with other rage, like especially if you have bad rage generation, like Inflame or Rage Serum. Having that initial rage can often help get that going a little bit more. So it's more of an early game artifact, but it's not completely useless outside of the early game. There are also some just sort of, it's pretty good with Superfood Primordium. You'll immediately start stacking some rage. That's a good thing. Good with Melting Remnant, I'd say, because every time you reform units, they come in with a rage. But typically there's just not much of a ceiling there, and a lot of times it can quickly become almost completely irrelevant come late game. But it's pretty good. I still consider it like good. There's only these 2 artifacts that I kind of consider bad. Speaking of them, let's get to them now. Scorched Steel. I don't know. Every now and then it can be okay, but for the most part it sucks. It's just like kind of hammered chest plates. It's just pretty bad. This is an artifact I think that could really... a lot of these artifacts have like their divine version, and a lot of them are good candidates for just having some way in the game by late game to upgrade to that permanently. And this would be a good one, I think, because 5 armor is so frickin' irrelevant in 99% of runs. The only time it'd be okay, I guess it's mildly okay with like Apex Imp, but that's a rare unit. How often does that come about? And even then, it's not even necessarily that amazing. It's okay with Superfood Primordium, similar to Scorching Restraints. You get that armor stacking immediately. I'd say it's less good in that situation though, because 5 armor is not as good as 3 rage. So I don't know. It just isn't usually that impactful. A lot of times I would say 25 gold is better. Like, I wouldn't really say 25 gold is better than the majority of these. Maybe Restraints. I'd still probably always take Restraints because I want offense. But defense is a measly 5 armor is really irrelevant. And at the very bottom, what is it? Consumed Crown, I think it's called. Whatever, I'll put it up on the screen there. But, I don't know. This one is like when I it was the last artifact added, I think, along with the Queen Imp or whatever. I thought it was okay at first, but over time I realized just how bad it was. Like, it's so bad. All it does is it gives you on Slay a Root Seed's worth of damage scaling. That's really, some of these like Scorching Restraints are pretty noticeably good early game, but this one isn't even noticeably good early game. Instead of just every unit coming in with 6 damage, it's like the units have to get a Slay. But early game, that's kind of a tall order, right? That's kind of why Reaper sucks. Reaper starts with crap damage. 25 is not going to kill anything other than a clergyman. I'll take any opportunity to bash Hellhorned Prince, especially the Reaper path, as I can. But what I'm trying to say is early game, it's hard to get slays outside of clergymen, and even if you do, the payoff of 2 damage is a frickin' joke. Probably the best situation for this is, honestly, stuff in other clans. Nothing within Hellhorned really makes sense with this one. Maybe Imperialist Shardtail. Because really you need 1 unit kind of hogging all the kills for this to even be that relevant. I'd say a sweeper is probably the best application of it. If you think about it, it's kind of like the Shattered Shells effect, except worse. And Shattered Shell doesn't even have necessarily that great of an effect. But I guess if you had Shattered Shell on top of this, then it starts to become maybe a little bit noticeable. But that's really the best situation, I would say, is sweepers. Or maybe a Eel Gorgon or something. It's really not that good. It's very, very, very low impact. I would much rather they... This one, I don't even think has a divine version either, whereas this one does, but... Or does this one even? I know this one does. Anyway, though, that is the end of the Hellhorned artifacts. We'll go on to Awoken next. Always curious as to what your thoughts are. Do you have any surprises here? Anything you disagree with? Anything you agree with? Let me know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. Peace.